Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to what I have to say. This is my talk called Santa's Little Helper. So, a little bit about me. My name is Harrison Ravazzolo. I'm a solutions consultant at Fleet. I have a background in client platform engineering, identity access management, things like that. Before I worked in tech, I was working in many bakeries and restaurants in Europe and across the country. So have kind of an eclectic background, and I'm an avid climber, yogi, outdoorsman, all that kind of good stuff. So what is Santa? Santa's a binary file authorization system for macOS. Leverages a rule set, allow list and ilist, and those rules are defined by specifying app identifiers. So CD hash for something very specific, or something more broad like team ID. And that configuration is usually stored in a dedicated sync server. This is kind of what your end users will see when they go to open up something that's not authorized. You get a little bit of information around what was blocked and why. So talking about the sync server, kind of serves three primary purposes. So it allows you to distribute those allow and deny rules across all of your hosts. You can collect execution events and the blocked binary reports, and then you can manage those changes and updates. And what you see there is just kind of how that's defined in the configuration that's sent to your devices. So there's kind of three main implementations that folks use. There's a Moreau server, which is Golang based, kind of hard-coded rules. You have Rudolph, which is a serverless sync service, primarily using the API gateway on AWS. And then you have Zentrol, which is a config managed via Terraform. And while these are all great options, running any of these solutions may incur things like additional infrastructure costs or additional upkeep, and you might have to adopt a configuration language that your team is not familiar with. So what if you can get all the benefits and functionality of a sync server using your existing device management solution? And that's kind of the goal of this talk, is to show an alternate way to deploy and manage Santa right in your MDM. So this is what it looks like. You basically have Fleet. You have Fleet as your MDM. You have our GitOps approach to device management, and then you have Santa itself that kind of creates this ecosystem. So instead of building a custom sync server to define your rules, you're defining them here in a configuration declaratively through XML or mobile configs. And you can kind of see configuration as code, so you're being able to manage those configurations in your Git repository, automatic deployment of the rule set. You're streamlining your rule distribution, so your changes are pushed to your Git repository through your CI/CD pipeline, and then you're doing event collection and monitoring through osquery, so you're aggregating and visualizing your data. So there's kind of two parts to this. Under the hood, it's configuration profiles. So first we have our base configuration, and then we kind of pass on a rules configuration over it. And the important part here is that when it's deployed this way, it's immutable. So coming from your MDM, the users can't modify your rule set and override. So the example here is showing if you're kind of using like a GitOps approach through Fleet, you can assign the rules mobile config to specific teams using labels. So for example, if you had a different rule set for your engineers versus those in finance, and you can specify that rule set this way. That's kind of what it looks like. So this is the first kind of base configuration that we lay down. These are the things that very rarely change day to day. So this is things like your client mode, your messaging that you send to your end users, your mapping for your devices, things like that. So if you were to change them, it would require a little bit more testing. So we kind of just define this config profile, lay it down, and then next we have the actual rules files. And so these are simply defined in XML or mobile config. Right? It's a language that your team is most likely already very familiar with. And so the key here is that this file is primarily where we're leveraging that GitOps workflow. So you're making changes, you're creating pull requests that look like that. We've all seen that. So now let's say your team has made some changes and you're going to go through your traditional sort of code flow. You're creating a pull PR, you're having it reviewed by your team, having it merged, approved, merged, things like that. And then automatic deployment through your CI/CD pipeline. You can see here is just an example of the rule set that's defined by that mobile config as it exists on your end machine. And again, immutability is kind of the immutability of the profile is the key here. And then from there, you can use osquery to collect that data. So you can pull data, generate reports that matter to you and your team. So for example, here's a dashboard showing apps that attempted to open over a specific period of time. Or you can also get alerted. So here's a Slack sort of Tines workflow example where if an app has not been seen in your environment before, but was recently blocked, you can kind of send a note to your security team, take actions, things like that. So why this way? You have a simplified architecture. You have no technical overhead. You're managing everything right in your MDM. You're adopting those DevOps methodologies, so your existing CI/CD pipeline to deploy your rules. So there's no more wondering who deployed what rule, when and why. Super efficient. You're able to very quickly deploy and change those rules, push it out to thousands of devices, and it scales very well across tens of thousands of devices. That's my quick talk. There's my LinkedIn. I have my GitHub, which has some more examples of some things we've done here. And I just want to thank my colleague, Alan, who I've worked with on this. It's been a pleasure kind of building and working with him. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know.